Just last week, Canon surprised us with the announcement of the Canon R5 Mark II. But as a Canon R5 shooter, is it worth upgrading? And I'm going to start right now. Over the last 3.5–4 years, I've pretty much solely been shooting on the Canon EOS R5, both for photography and video. In fact, I'm actually shooting on my R5 right now. If you want to know more about what I think of the R5, kind of my long-term review, go ahead and watch this video here. But just last week, Canon surprised us with the announcement of both the R1 as well as the R5 Mark II, which actually fixes a lot of the issues and problems I had with the original R5. Like, for example, the overheating issues in certain video modes, as well as that 29-minute, 59-second record limit, which as a wedding photographer is incredibly frustrating. But is it worth upgrading if you're already an R5 shooter? Let's quickly have a look at the R5 Mark II. So the first noticeable spec is going to be the sensor, and it's got a brand new 45 megapixel backside illuminated or BSI stacked sensor. Now this is a big upgrade over the original R5. Grant you, it's the same resolution, 45 megapixels, but the stacked sensor means it's got a faster readout. Now that's not necessarily something that's going to impact my workflow. I'm a wedding and portrait photographer, so I'm never really photographing any fast moving objects. But if you're a sports or wildlife photographer, mainly doing golf or anything with really fast moving objects, you're going to get less warping and distortion issues. Also in video mode, you're also going to get less rolling shutter because the sensor has a faster readout because it's a stacked sensor. So this is a really big upgrade for certain photographers. The R5 Mark II also has a new autofocus system using a dual pixel intelligent AF. Now I haven't actually used the R5 Mark II yet, it hasn't been in my hands, but once Canon give me a loan to try for 1 or 2 weeks, I'll definitely put it through its paces. Already the R5 had really good autofocus system. It had, never really ran into an issue unless I was in really challenging lighting environments. So I'm really interested to see how good the R5 Mark II is, especially for certain types of subjects. It also has an upgraded IBIS system, which is in-body image stabilization, which is great for low light, long exposure photography, handheld, or just great for video work. The R5 had 8 stops, where the R5 Mark II has 8.5 stops with certain lenses. So IBIS, if that's really important to you, the R5 Mark II is going to be a noticeable upgrade. It also has a slightly different body design with slight changes to the overall button placement. It's almost a mixture between the original R5 and the R6 Mark II with a new cooling design with an optional fan battery grip. Now that was the big thing with the original R5 was the overheating issue, but that is going to be a thing of the past with the R5 Mark II thanks to the new cooling design with that optional battery grip. So if you're someone that has an R5 and you find it overheating more often than not, the R5 Mark II is an obvious upgrade. Plus, it has finally full-sized HDMI. Why it took Canon so long to add a full-sized HDMI port onto any of their cameras is beyond me, but finally they've added it, which means long gone is the really annoying, small and constantly breaking micro HDMI. We all welcome the full-sized HDMI. They've also added a tally light, which isn't something I was necessarily asking for, but something I actually really like. My R5 obviously doesn't have it, but the Canon C70, which I shoot a lot of my corporate work on, does have a tally light, and it's incredibly helpful to know when it is and when it isn't recording. We always joke about, you film a whole video ceremony, you press the camera to stop and it starts recording. You're like, oh no, I've just missed the ceremony. So that isn't going to happen with a tally light because it's really recognizable when the camera is either recording or not recording. As well, it's also added a smart hot shoe, which is something I was asking for from the original R5. It means you can now use XLR adapters and microphones directly through the smart hot shoe, which is really helpful. And lastly, they've actually made a new style of battery. Now this is the same shape and size as the original battery from the R5, as well as the original battery from the old 5D Mark IV. It's just basically got more juice inside it, so it's going to last slightly longer, plus it's got a slightly higher voltage output that allows it to record and photograph in slightly different formats. So overall, it's actually a decent upgrade when it comes to its overall specs. And also video has had a dramatic improvement. It now films in up to 8K 60 frames raw in video, up from 30 frames from the original R5. It also films in 4K 120, Plus, it now films in 2K up to 240 frames a second, which is twice as slow as the original R5. It also now films in both C-Log, C-Log 3, plus now C-Log 2. And when you film in C-Log 2, because it's a really flat profile and it's what other more cinematic cameras film, like for example the C70 and C300, you've now got an increase of dynamic range with up to 16 stops, which actually is a decent improvement from both C-Log, which is 11 stops, and C-Log 3, which is around 12 stops. So 16 stops of dynamic range, which is what I get with the C70, is a dramatic improvement over the original R5. And lastly, no record limit. And that's something that we've all been asking for with the original R5, and a lot of other cameras no longer don't have it anymore. For example, the R6 Mark II, R8, and even R7. So finally, the R5 Mark II has no record limit, which is great if you're a wedding filmmaker just like myself. So it sounds like a no-brainer. Of course you should upgrade if you've got the original R5. It fixed basically all the problems from the original R5, like overheating, that really annoying HDMI port, as well as the no record limit. So why haven't I pre-ordered it yet? Am I going to be pre-ordering it anytime soon? And it's something we haven't actually discussed yet in this video, but it's the big elephant in the room, and that is price. I've got to admit, before the R5 Mark II was actually announced, I was thinking, oh, if they do release a Mark II, I can imagine it being around maybe £3,500–4,000 £4,000. But annoyingly, it's a lot more than I was expecting. Retailing coming in brand new at £4,499. Plus, if you want to buy that optional battery grip, which is kind of a no-brainer, especially if you're a video shooter, that comes in at £549. So if you wanted to buy a camera and the grip, you're looking at over £5,000 to buy the kind of whole shebang. And that's without any optional extra batteries or anything like that. Now, I shoot on two cameras. I shoot on two R5s, as well as I obviously have my Canon C70. And for videos, I like shooting kind of a triple angle if I can. So if I were to upgrade, I'm gonna have to buy two Canon R5s and two battery grips. And that comes in at almost over £10,000. And at the moment, I just don't realistically have that money to upgrade that all at one point. So maybe in the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to upgrade both cameras, but I kind of want to upgrade both at the same time. It would be really annoying owning one R5 Mark II and one R5, and the record limit, HDMI ports. I kind of want to integrate everything at the same time if I can. And the problem with that is that's going to be really expensive. So write down in the comments below, have you pre-ordered already, or are you thinking of upgrading? But me personally, I'm probably going to wait until maybe the Black Friday deals, or maybe later on into the year, because it's a pretty steep step up in price point from the original R5 to the R5 Mark II. Definitely worth upgrading, but for me, I'm going to hang out for a while longer. But of course, write down in the comments below, what are you guys doing? Are you upgrading? Are you not upgrading? Or are you just going to stick with the original R5? Write down in the comments below. I've been James for Photo Fever, and I'll catch you guys next time.